on to our next speaker, I think it's important to point out that the people on the panel tonight and those municipal officials in attendance tonight represent both Democrats and Republicans equally. At the local level, this is not about politics. It's about maintaining our sovereignty. And with that, Brian Coppola from Robinson Township, Washington County, will discuss the issues in our township and the lack of infrastructure planning that's not addressed by either House Bill 1950 or Senate Bill 1100.
I'm going to turn the microphone around a little bit so I can look at the screen while I'm talking. Sorry that I have my back to you there, but I've got some pictures to show you. Brian Coppola from Robinson Township. And I'm going to start by looking at Senate Bill 1100 and House Bill 1950 and what they actually allow. They allow oil and gas development as a permitted or conditional use in all zoning districts. And I think, as most of the municipal officials know, conditional use is nothing more than a permitted use with conditions. It also allows compressor stations as a permitted or conditional use in all zoning districts. This is a picture of a well pad that's under construction in Robinson Township. To give you an idea of the size, it's about a 6-acre pad. If you compare that to the traditional shallow wells that we've been used to seeing here in the state for a number of years, it's about 100 times bigger than the size of a shallow well pad. This is a deep well pad. You can see the frac pond at the top of the screen, and then at the bottom of the screen is the millings pit. But off to the left there you see a house. And at the very bottom of the screen there's a driveway that goes to that house. That is approximately the distance that this legislation would allow this activity to occur. And remember, it would be a permitted use in any of your residential, commercial, or industrial districts. Now, this is a picture of a compressor station from ground level. And again, that would be able to be located in your residential districts. Next picture is an aerial view of a compressor station. It gives you a little better view of the size. The building is probably close to 3 stories high. There's 5 compressors in there. The sites are usually 6 acres in size. That would also be permitted in your residential and your commercial zoning districts. To give you an idea, something like that could probably be put on Green Tree Road. What else do the bills allow? They allow processing plants as a permitted use in industrial and conditional use in agricultural districts. Now, a lot of the urban areas aren't familiar with agricultural districts, but most of the suburban areas have what they call either rural residential or low-density residential that allow for agricultural areas in these districts, and these processing plants would be allowed in those areas. It also allows seismic testing and related activities throughout every community. That's a picture of a processing plant located in Robinson Township. We actually found out about that plant probably 6 months after it was built. No permits. That's in one of our residential agricultural areas. That's a mini plant. Some of the bigger plants take up to 100 acres. So that's a small plant there. This is a seismic testing map that we received. We had a company come in and request a permit to do seismic testing in the township. The blank areas are the areas where they can't do any testing for whatever reason. They don't have permission from the property owner. But typically when somebody signs one of these leases for gas and oil development, they automatically give them the right to do seismic testing. Those little dots located throughout that map, most of those are charges through your township. And this bill would allow that through all of your zoning districts. also, the House and Senate bill both say that a local ordinance cannot be more stringent than the model ordinance. And if you look through some of the conditions of the model ordinance, there's almost nothing in there that would protect any of our zoning districts in the township. It also allows the Attorney General to act on behalf of the gas industry against local communities. So, in essence, you have a billion-dollar company using our Attorney General to prosecute local communities. A local ordinance is found to be too restrictive by the Attorney General will make that community ineligible to receive the impact fee. This is what the Senate and House bill do not do. They do not address any of the issues that we've seen in Robinson Township. They don't address density, well pads, gathering lines, transmission lines, compressors, or processing plants. Infrastructure planning and sharing of pipelines and midstream facilities. Andy Schrader and I visited quite a few of our elected officials, senators, and representatives, and none of them understood the concept of shared infrastructure. If you've got 10 different drilling companies that come into your township to do gas and oil well drilling, they all want their own pipeline, compressors, and gathering lines. So this is not being addressed in any of these bills. In fact, I found out one of the representatives or senators even understood the concept.
Yeah, that's right.
Setbacks. Under the old Oil and Gas Act, I believe it was a couple 100 feet, 200 feet, that the shallow wells had to be from a residence, and now they're proposing 500 feet. As you saw on the previous slide, 500 feet from a home, maybe somebody doesn't own their gas rights, you'd almost be condemning the property. You almost couldn't live there. We need to have reasonable distances from these homes, businesses, schools, hospitals. All this drilling activity, compressor stations, can all be put within 500 feet of any one of those structures. They have to address better protection for surface owners in residential and commercial districts. What does that mean? There's townships where 40% of the people in that township do not own their mineral rights. They have no protections. Business development, business parks, commercial areas. If they don't own their gas rights, without conditional use, without zoning regulations, gas company could go in, put a pad in the middle of your future business development area. So all these are the issues that need to be addressed, and they haven't been addressed. This is a picture of Fort Cherry School. This is our local school district in Washington County. That's the school on the right-hand side of the screen. And there's a well pad to the left, about halfway up the screen, on the edge of the woods. That's one pad. And if you go to the top of the screen in the center, you can see the derrick. That's another pad. Now, we're able to control that because we have conditional use. We can tell them where we would like them to drill when they come in for permits. If this law, either one of these bills would pass, those wells could actually be right in that darker grass area right around the school, 500 feet away. Compressor stations could also be located here. So if the property owner agreed to allow a compressor or a drilling pad to be put next to that school, your local municipality couldn't do anything to stop it. This is another well site in Robinson Township. You can see the frac ponds at the top of the screen. And I wanted to show you these pictures because if this legislation passes, this is what we're going to have in our neighborhoods, and it's going to be completely under control. Compressor stations, drilling, we have no zoning conditions whatsoever if this preemption passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. The protection of the health, safety, and welfare of residents is required by municipal officials by the PA Municipalities Planning Code. However, buried within Chapter 32 of House Bill 1950 is a short statement that opens the door to more than just the civil fines and penalties most of us are aware of from Chapter 33. Chapter 33 of the bill addresses the local ordinances. Chapter 32 says this: under Section 3255, the penalty section, Section C, authority, the department, and in this case it's referring to the Department of Environmental Protection. The department may institute a prosecution against any person or municipality for a violation of this chapter. That's a criminal charge against any municipality that the DEP may take under this ordinance, or I'm sorry, under this bill. So the question, and we'll raise this to the panel, is can we do our jobs? Knowing that we have that restriction leaning against us if this bill passes, can we do our jobs? Can we do our jobs?
You want me to answer? The answer is no. By virtue of what? By virtue of what? And I want to thank everybody for commenting. I really am. In Pittsburgh we got on a little earlier than a lot of places did, because by virtue of the fact that we had the privilege and honor by the public to work full time on these things. Many of the township supervisors that I know and have worked with on this and a lot of other issues don't have that luxury. You've got your business to attend to, your families and everything else, and then at night you go to the township meeting. And it works. It works very well. But now we're in it, and now you got a vote coming up tomorrow, probably. I got word later this evening that the Senate Bill 111 essentially rolled into 1950, the House bill, so we're conformed. So you have a lot of fundamental issues to deal with here, and this is where I can't impress upon you this point that our legislature presumes much. They presume much. They presume that the matters of mortgages and property value have been dealt with and resolved. They haven't even touched on it. The leasing, which you may have seen the article in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette about what's been going on with the leases. The people think they signed a lease that might have 5 years, that all of a sudden now it gets rolled over in perpetuity. The split estate issue, where the property owns the land above, somebody else owns it, and it's well settled law. The court case goes back to 1888, I think it is, some coal company versus Mellon, that they have an absolute right to come onto your land to get their estate. That's well settled law. They don't need to give you notice. We've had stories of folks where they just basically knocked the fence in and started operations on a drill pad or whatever on that property with no notice to the owner. They didn't have to. The state presumes, and the legislature at this point presumes, that all of these things have been dealt with. Mine subsidence in Cecil Township, and I'm sure a lot of your townships. If you go read a mine subsidence insurance contract, and this was brought to me by a woman in Jefferson Township, showed me the language, and there's in the contract that you and I all help subsidize with state dollars, by the way, and I'm more than happy to pay that money to help my neighbor out in case something goes wrong. But if you sign a lease that releases them from liabilities, you've just invalidated your mine subsidence insurance contract that's sitting at home in the drawer. And how many folks are reading these things? I'm hearing reports now of upwards of 70% of the population are signing leases without benefit of any legal counsel whatsoever. None. This is a very complex transaction. So you have the issue of private persons, the company and the lessor, doing a transaction that you get no notice of. You're going to hear about it through the grapevine. There's no notice to the township. There's no other requirements other than that, and then how do we run a government, whether it's the city of Pittsburgh or Robinson Township in Washington, or Cecil, or Espyville up in Pymatumey Lake, and so forth. How leaving Oakmont is helpful to understand a little bit, and that was the court case in 2010, I think, Supreme Court case, 9, thank you. But in that, it was a case of the MPC is subservient, the Municipal Planning Code is subservient to the Oil and Gas Act, and that was the argument until it got to the Supreme Court and they settled, and they said, no, they work together. And that both of them really largely do the same thing. It's about public safety. The Gas Act is about safety, about drilling properly and all that stuff, and protecting things from blowing up and what have you. And zoning is essentially the same thing too. You know, you don't put a children's school next to Edgar Thompson Works in Braddock. It's an incompatible use there together. But what the Supreme Court did say in that decision was where the two leave company is zoning is about character of the community. And this is what we're talking about here, the fundamental right for a community to determine its character. Do you want to be Ligonier with a nice little gazebo and looking, it's a very pretty bucolic town? Or do you want to be Las Vegas? Or do you want to be something in between? But it's our right, up until now, maybe up until tomorrow, to decide the character of our community. We have a state park down at the river, is the point. It's a state park, not a city park. About 5-6 weeks ago, the Senate voted, I think, 47-2 with Jim Furlow and a very conservative fellow property rights guy and everything, very conservative Republican, voted against it, where the Senate empowered the Department of General Services to now begin to enter into contracts with people to lease land, i.e. Somerset County, SCI Somerset, the prison land. You want to lease it? You can lease it. They also, in that bill, empowered the state higher education system to do the same, begin to allow state-related universities to begin to lease their land. And that was done without so much as a hello to us. I haven't heard of one state legislative committee or Senate committee, House or whatever, to come into our communities to hold hearings on this.
Right.
Now, I'm leaving here and I'm going to go back to work tonight to work on a zoning bill for LED signage in the city. It's been a matter of controversy. And one of the things we can't do, as was pointed out, is we're under Pennsylvania law, we can't exclude them. So you got to carve out a place for it, and you can regulate it, and it will determine the character of the city. You're going to have LED billboards hanging off everything, or you're going to limit them, or whatever, and that's up to the community, we the people, to decide. So we can do that on a billboard, but in a far and away more pervasive and impactful use. The industrialization of a community is what this is about, that we have no say whatsoever. And of course that obviously is going to bump into all kinds of things. Property value, people are having trouble getting mortgages on leased land. The state presumes that that issue is resolved. It's not. The state presumes that there has been input from we the people. There has been none. And I got a list here, insurance issues, as I pointed out on the mines of science, but also go check your homeowner's policies when you get home. You're not covered for an industrial use on your property. But on the other side of the coin, the state makes no effort to inform the consumer, we the people, as to what we should be or should not, should be aware of when making this choice. The state of Maryland's Attorney General a year ago, they have a 3-year moratorium. They're into their 2nd year. Last year, the Attorney General began a concerted public information program to tell you what you should know about leasing, and so that you make an informed choice. There has been, Sonny Popowski runs the Consumer Protection Division of the Attorney General's office. There's no mandate from the Attorney General or anywhere else to come in and say this is what you need to know so that you can make an informed choice. We have no choice. So pulling back a little bit, Point State Park, are they going to drill there? Are we going to have a rig right there in the middle of the city of Pittsburgh, the focal point of this region, the Three Rivers? Under this bill, yeah, you can. In fact, I would argue that the state could go in with or without this bill because they're taking my land, your land, lands held in common, in trust for the people of this Commonwealth, our state parks, our state game lands, our state forests, that they, under the Rendell administration, signed over 300,000 acres of leased land in our state parks. You go to the state constitution, Article 1, Chapter 27, and it's clear what it says. These places are held in common in trust for the people of Pennsylvania for their use and for their use and enjoyment and for generations yet to come. And the Constitution tells our state legislature they have an obligation to protect that. And what did they do? They leased it. And we've got nothing to say. Now they're putting a bill together that says if you do say something, we're going to charge you with a crime. This is a fundamental moment in Pennsylvania. Well, how you feel about this? It's charged with emotion. There's jobs and there's money, absolutely. But there's also so much more, and I think what was pointed out in one of the presentations, that you're giving rights to others, exclusively the oil and gas industry, while removing them from me. That's not the United States. That is not this country. Penn State voted to amend their home rule charter in this past election cycle to say, no thank you. All right, well, that's great, but that's going out the window if this act gets passed. There is no local option. Senator Scarnati last May wrote a rather nice op-ed about how good this is all going to be. And he said in that op-ed, those communities that choose not to have or allow drilling will not get any share of the impact fee. And I said, oh, we have a choice. I have to presume there's a choice. There is no choice. There is none. Now, Wilkinsburg made a choice a long time ago when the prohibition ended to go wet or dry. They're still dry. There's not a bar. You can't buy a drink in Wilkinsburg. Why? Because the people there decided that the character of their community, going back to the zoning code, that's what they wanted to define it as. It was not going to have liquor, and it still doesn't have any to this day, because they voted and they had a choice. The city of Pittsburgh, after we did our due diligence, we didn't rush into this ban issue, but we put science, health, all these other issues here because we have an obligation to the people's health, welfare, and public safety. And I didn't do a lot. I have to do a lot of hard twisting. I made my case. I put it in. We brought people with specific knowledge about this industry and the effects from the industry, and the benzene, the toluene, the xylene, the ethylbenzene, the radionuclides, the radioactive material, the bromide in the river. And council deliberated on this, and we got a 9-0 vote. That doesn't happen in my council very often at all. And you want to watch it. But then in there was consensus because there was the health, welfare, and safety of the people that came first. And we made a decision. But that's not going to count for anything if this goes through. And it's not going to count for Baldwin, which banned it, Forest Hills, Wilkinsburg, Pittsburgh, West Homestead, and State College. Either by their representatives at the local level decided something, and it was legal, and nobody came down and said we were wrong. The public didn't rise up. We held hearings. We went to the public. We explained what the issues were. And in Pittsburgh, the band enjoys significant support. But now we're confronted with something new. And the bad news is this. This stuff's been going on in Pennsylvania since '03. The oil and gas industry knew exactly what it had to do, exactly what it had to do, and it's done it. We are busy trying to balance budgets, find out where to get our road salt at a better price, or manage a development that's coming to our community. And now we see what happened in '05 in Congress. They exempted this industry, not United States Steel, from the Clean Air Act, from all these, the Clean Water Act, CERCLA, RCRA, and so forth. they're out. They got that done in 05. 06, they come into Washington County, file a suit because some rural counties had been levying extraction taxes. Why do you do that? Well, we always did. But when the lawyers got a hold of it and they looked, there's no enabling legislation from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, therefore the tax was illegal and disposed of. Again, clearing the decks, moving in, and then they sell this idea of, well, we need a uniform deal across Pennsylvania. And that began 3 years ago, and now you had a governor that said, yeah, I'm all for that. And everybody else said, well, what do you expect from Corbett? You voted. He didn't say that he wasn't going to do that. He did. He's doing exactly what he did say. But that doesn't make it necessarily right. And it certainly doesn't make things any better for us in municipal government level to manage and respect the wishes of the people, develop the character of our community as to what it is and what it hopes to be. And when you have this coming in and basically everybody's playing by these rules over here except for these guys. I've never seen any situation where someone had that much preemptive power to deal in a municipality. My final thing is I need you to think about this. Those of you that are in municipal government that have had developments and such, and we have this in the city of Pittsburgh, institutionals, and the zoning and our planning specialist here alluded to it. In the city of Pittsburgh, every large institution in the EMI, Educational Medical Institutional Districts that we have in our zoning code, must follow a master plan for 10 years outlook so that we know where CMU and Pitt and UPMC and even Pittsburgh Theological Seminary's footprint is going to look like in 10 years. And it has to be approved by the council. It's done in order to head off these conflicts or cross purposes in planning, and then the community together and its component parts are working together to the common goal of developing and enriching the city and its people. And so they have to follow a master plan. Now think about this. When we think about drilling, we think about it in its component parts. There's a well over here. There's a compression station over there. There's a stripper plant over here. There's a pipeline or a series of pipelines. Now, when you think about it, this is essentially, and I like to look at Fayette because I've been looking at Fayette quite a while through their history in the last year, is they have 7,000 acres of land leased in South Fayette Township. And essentially what South Fayette Township becomes is one large industrial site because the wells connect to the compressor station, connect to the stripper station, connected to these other facilities that are operating in and out of the community. And I would argue that the whole community de facto is turned into a industrial zone. That can't be. Otherwise we'd still be like our great-grandpap or grandpaps down in the south side living next to the steel mill. We decided that was not the way to define a city. That was not the best way to grow a city and give a community, here's your residential area, here's your industrial areas, and so forth. So essentially what you have in these townships is essentially an overlay district that is completely industrial because your community now is totally engulfed in an industrial use that is all one facility that is connected. It'd be like Edgar Thompson Works spreading out through the whole valley up into Braddock Hills and Forest Hill. Well, we're going to put a piece of it over here and a piece of it over here and over there. We have a big decision to make. And it's not about whether we're for or against this. It's how are you going to take what you've seen, the pieces of the bill, and how are we going to stop it? And how are we going to redefine the debate at this point? Because politically, a lot of people at the upper levels of government have already crossed that bridge. We have yet to, and in fact, nobody's even asked us what we wanted to. And therein lies your political fight. And to throw something else out on the table, every one of these guys are up for re-election, and we all know where state reps come, local government, and I can see where people that are going to be deeply offended at the community level are going to look for champions in their community to go find someone that can do the job for them as opposed to the fellow that signed them away and signed away their lives, their land, and their lives.